That's great. I mean, you put forward some really interesting points there that really, that the tie into how this is going to accelerate the adoption within the market. These are the things that people need to do. These are the things that people need to consider, right from the basic steps up to the more sophisticated ways that this can be approached. And I think, in building that biz case, you've covered off some of the savings that would really go into that, the negotiation to get better deals, which obviously includes things like running more competitive bidding rather than just awarding stuff when it's not captured.
Huge point.
You mentioned about the kind of, it's just not possible to manage this manually. You mentioned about automation, you mentioned about efficiency. That's a huge savings driver. Maybe seen as a soft saving within a lot of procurement teams, but that is still a massive saver. Obviously, negotiating better deals, instantly a hard saving pre-contract. What was the budget? What was the actual contracted price, or how much did we save in our negotiation? Definitely a hard saving. You also mentioned visibility and control. Cut more on the soft saving side when you talk to most procurement people, but critical. And that ties into the risk, the misclassification, all of that compliance and governance side. I think the last one I wanted to touch on was really the spend under management. It kind of ties into all of the others. It ties into, the efficiency, the automation, the visibility, the control, all that sort of stuff. But another thing, an area that's interesting where procurement teams will look at hard savings, as they'll say, if this statement of work engagement is run under procurement control and procurement visibility, we'll save 15%, because the procurement person will help write a better requirement. They'll make sure it goes out to the right suppliers. They'll make sure there's a competitive process. They'll make sure there's a negotiation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we'll save, on average, 10%, 15%, whatever it might be. Increasing that spend under management is something we see massively within the customers that we deal with as a way that they measure the progress of the program. Because it can be quite complex to try and really nail in and measure the savings, but you can see if your contracted price is different to your budgeted price. And you can also see, with regards to the spend under management, how much spend are we actually dealing with here? Because in some organizations, with consulting, for example, it might not be budgeted as such. In a sense, it might be when you need it. It's a kind of like a slush fund type approach. But if you understand what percentage of that spend you have under management, and you apply that logic of a procurement person is going to add X value, that's another really interesting hard saving that hopefully people can use to accelerate that adoption and build those sort of business cases. Is that, would you agree with that?
Would. And I think as it's a journey, as I've mentioned, and you're not eating the elephant all at once, as you mentioned, and as I mentioned too, talking about starting with having procurement negotiate the statement of work and the conditions and the terms, and then dropping it down into the MSP team that's managing the statement of work module. I think over time, as the adoption and the program becomes more mature on statement of work, you will see that you're going to start having commonalities of projects within the statement of work module. And that is where the next level of genius comes in, is that you can then take that team and they'll have enough experience and have seen enough data coming through and enough statement of works and understanding the terminology. Then they can start reaching out and partnering and building that bridge with procurement, whatever team it is, whatever category that's involved, and saying, all right, we now have the knowledge. I can speak their language. I've seen enough of this. We can start moving to the next generation of statement of work spend, SOW2 or something. And you can start utilizing these tools that have features, like you said, competitive bidding. You can then become a partner to that procurement team and say, look, we noticed that we have, I'll just use SharePoint, for example, just something simple. We've noticed we've had a lot of SharePoint projects over the last few years. We understand that you guys are using pretty much the same players for this. Why not allow us to use, for the next SharePoint project that comes across in your desk and the business darkens your door? Why not use the RFX or the request for RFP capabilities of the SOW module tool that we have, right? And be able to assist you with now automating some of those competitive bidding tasks that are on your plate. Wouldn't that be great? And I know, as someone who has done RFPs and RFIs and RFQs, that would make my life great. If I had somebody that would automate all that stuff and it would come back scored, and then I could go back to the business and say, here's what we found. We used X and such. You may recognize these suppliers. Our MSP team or our SOW team recommended a couple of other suppliers that maybe you're not familiar with, but we've used in different parts of the organization. And here are your top 5 or top 3 or top 10. I mean, whatever. All that work's done for them. To me, that would have been huge, because a lot of that stuff I had to manage myself, utilizing tools that were not necessarily purpose built or user friendly at organizations. So to me, that would be another huge driver along that vein of being able to help increase that, right? And the potential would be that, you know, you could start reining in based on those numbers you were talking about with the Allegis report. Who cares if it's 5 times bigger than contingent, or 2 times, or 10 times, or 80 times? If you can get a majority, or even a small, even if you can get 20% of that, you're affecting major change. You're saving the organization a lot of money and bringing a lot of efficiency to the table, and that will help make you successful as an external workforce program along the journey, right? So that would be how I would add to what you said. I think you summed it up quite eloquently, but I wanted to just add a couple extra points there.